Look, man, over here, the wizards are not judge-worthy people. We've all had our weird share of financial decisions before, like taking a game that recently came out to check out and using our favorite elongated version of curse words in shock of the subtotal of that price tag. Like, they'll tell you this outrageous number, then have the nerve to ask if you want to add a PowerPoint membership on top of that. Do you want to fight me? Because you have to remember that gaming is and always has been a luxury hobby in the sense that it's not required in your life and you can easily cut this expense off if you really wanted to. As much as big name companies like Nintendo, beg to differ on that and want it to be part of your everyday life with all those damn emails they send you. And with gaming being in this luxury nature Pokemon type, it'll often snarl its teeth at you with prices, especially now with the common adaptation of these non-monthly bill payer friendly prices. And then when it gets too crazy, it's common to see modern gamers take the hobby in their life and then, euthanize it. Gaming has always been expensive to keep up with in its most current state, and the main catalyst for this price epidemic is usually for the base price of most new modern titles, which currently sits at $70 US and translated accordingly to other currencies. A hefty price that's likely going to get increased in the next generation or two, or even sooner if game devs decide to universally come together and, pillage our wallets. So for the players that want a game on a budget or just don't want to pay that much into gaming, it can be really intimidating to see all these price tags on the shelves constantly all the time because it's so easy to save on pretty much every other factor in gaming, but it can be a tit for tat thing when it comes to buying the games themselves without feeling the sting of, paying for a new game that you might want to play around the time it comes out. It can be a splitting angel or devil decision to decide if you want to buy that game at that moment or not, but today, I want to be that wizard disguised as the devil on your shoulder, coerce you to not give in to the man and not pay those full prices in almost any situation when it comes to buying a new video game. And in my reasonings, I'm probably not going to give you any game that you haven't heard sometime before at this point in your life, but at least I can give you some, reminders on foolproof ways on how to not pay extreme amounts of cash on games that you just, might have forgotten about or not been thinking about. Ways that'll almost always save you money, and ultimately why paying full price genuinely, at least right now, isn't worth it more times than it is. So why don't we start at ground zero with the most universal way to save money on any product in the world, with a person's favorite word as long as it's followed by tax being sales. Like I said with any other business or product, sales are prevalent in gaming, especially around the times you'd expect them to be, like with Black Friday, any holidays, or whenever Walmart or Target has too much stock that they can't get rid of. But I would say with gaming, sales in some fashion are pretty much a year-round thing, to which games that you will want are likely going to be less than retail price at some point throughout the year, no matter, when you're checking. And then this likelihood exponentially goes up when you shop at an online marketplace platform like Steam, to which sales on that platform happen pretty much every day just for the fuck of it. Steam, GOG, Epic Games, all of these top platforms on PC-based devices usually have sales going through the roof when you're looking for them on the platform. And then you also have sales on obviously like console marketplaces like the PlayStation Store or the Microsoft Store, but I would say compared to a PC-based game marketplace, it doesn't really compare. Either way, man, sales are sales, but you also have the option to go into a physical store like GameStop, to which they usually have their own local sales or promotions that they may have going on at that time, like buying 2 games, getting 1 for free. And the same can be said for other stores like Target, Walmart, or Best Buy for as long as they continue to sell physical games, because they always just have like a regional promotion going on to which they are enticed maybe like a city or whatnot to go and buy more games if they're not buying games enough. And I think because of that, it's just as important to check your local stores for any promotions that they may have, since if a game doesn't sell well on the physical platform, then they're more than likely to try and get rid of that stock as soon as they can rather than waiting for a digital sale of that same game. But then again, what if the digital platform does get in a bit of a rut, like if a game just doesn't sell well on Steam or something? Well, at that point, the games themselves usually will go on sale depending on how well the game is selling, or if a developer or publisher wants to put their entire lineup of games on sale just because. These publisher-wide sale events are some of the best ways to get a bulk of games for a really decent price, and even if it's not for that reason and the game is just, terrible upon its release, that's probably the best way to get any of these newer titles that aren't that good, like the recent Dragon Age title that failed to meet player expectations when it came out, and not even a month after, its price cut got really slashed almost in half. So yeah, not really breaking any new ground with that, but still a reliable fashion of finding games at a really decent price when, all you have to do at that point is just wait for, the price to go down, which is no type of work. But then you kind of have another form of a sale that's more for the buyers that might not want to wait as long for a game to go on sale in probably the next couple of months, and that is with buying a game used. Because in the modern shopping era, sites like eBay, Mercari, Facebook Marketplace, sometimes Amazon and their used options, which they'll give you anyways when you buy new, is your best friend in this whole online game of price cheesing, especially for games that are more newer or hold their value for longer periods of time. Looking at you, Nintendo games. Because when it comes down to it, people just like to get rid of shit. Now, most of the time, people are trying to make a profit on these games and selling them for prices that they know they get a lot of money for, so that's probably the most downside effect of buying used, because you might buy a whole pre-owned thing in shitty state for a price close to the full price. But sometimes when there's a seller like me who understands the game and understands that people are charging these insane, ridiculous prices for games that aren't worth it, they will sell it for a steal of a price, especially if they probably beat this game or got frustrated with this game like how I am with Tears of the Kingdom right now. Or my favorite, they just might be aware of the whole game market and what it is and just charge whatever they want for a random game that maybe their grandson or son had and just want to get rid of it, which is amazing, the best kind of scenario. There's also the option of buying lots in games, which can usually be more expensive most of the time, but sometimes you might strike a deal to find like 2 or 3 games for the price of one full price game, which, at that point, who can beat that? But maybe you want to put a little bit more effort into finding these used games, to which you'll likely have a better reward for that, to which you always have the old-fashioned method of going out and about and going to physical locations to where people are trying to get their games off, like garage sales, flea markets, gaming conventions, or even, retro stores. All amazing places to buy used games, and usually people at this point, they're just trying to get rid of this shit so much, so you'll more than likely get an amazing deal. And even if not, you have the option of negotiating with these people, since it's a face-to-face thing and people are trying their best to work with you in these types of, ordeals when it's not like corporate. And at that point, even if you don't find a game, you can likely find a new friend, someone to talk to about these games, and someone just to bond over, these new video games. And then for another reason I think that you shouldn't buy into new games, that I think is a more underrated method of saving money in this sense, it's kind of a more specific to situation type of ordeal. But I think that if a game is in a numbered series and the newest game just came out, I think that if you haven't already, you should look into buying and playing the older games in that series that are likely at a more reasonable price tag than the newest game that just came out. Because not only do you save money, but you also establish the groundwork of if you actually like this type of game and want to play more of it in the future, of a more expanded version of what you're playing, at that current moment with the older title. And hell, a lot of times, I can't remember how many freaking games I've seen before that have better previous entries in the series rather than the newer entries, like, look at Fallout, with New Vegas being more regarded as a good game than Fallout 4, or, that new Fallout multiplayer game. The Sims 2 and 3 is leagues better than Sims 4 in its base capacity. Basically, any Grand Theft Auto after 3 makes you a more violent person after you play into these games, so, mission accomplished with those titles. You just usually can't go wrong with buying older games in the series, especially for the reasons that we listed before, with those games probably at a lower price tag with being used or just on sale or something. But you could also just buy into those games while you wait for the newer games to eventually go on sale, and by that point you'll be happy with what you've paid. And then another reason that kind of pertains to what I've already said as far as like buying a game on sale online, but It's kind of its own thing that people don't really speak too much on because I don't know people really trust it. But I think buying keys or online redemption codes on sites like Aniba or G2A are really reliable sources of getting these games. For as long as I can remember, I've been using sites like G2A to at least look for games that I really want. Now, for those that don't really know what these keys websites or, online redemption code sites are, basically a publisher or developer asks Steam or GOG, wherever they're selling their games on, they ask that platform for some keys, to which then they work out with these sellers on websites like G2A, to which then those sellers sell those keys to you being the consumer. Now, unfortunately, this whole scheme of things usually has a whole connotation of being, a scam website, because some sellers don't actually have the keys to the games that they're selling and are just trying to scam you. So that definitely is the worst negative of it. But I also think that for most games that recently came out, you won't find the best price on a website like G2A, since most of the time the sellers are going to only sell it for maybe $1 or a couple dollars off, or sometimes even more than the actual retail price, which is just fucking weird. I would say that buying a key or online redemption code on these websites is more better for a game that's already been on sale before, since usually that's the lowest price that you'll find it on these types of websites, since like I said, they're just Steam keys or GOG keys that came directly from the publisher. But since we're talking questionable online purchases, I think that this is a perfect time to have an honorable mention for, sources like GameFly or, any game renting service, which includes subscriptions, since these are also viable ways to get, games for a cheaper price. Sometimes. We've all seen the commercials growing up. GameFly, as a service, I think it's just more of a hassle than it is of convenience, because maybe you can pay $20 a month to buy, or rent any game that you want for a month or whatever the period is. But at that point, you gotta ship the game. We have to get the game, then ship it back in the state that it came in, so you don't have any deductible fees or something. And then with game renting, I'm not sure if the red box is still an operational thing, but that was definitely the go-to thing when I was a kid. But at that point, only having it for a day is not really much to know if you really enjoy the title, especially if you don't have that much downtime. But also with the game renting, that comes with subscriptions, which is the more notable way people are renting games nowadays, since you don't technically own them. But for the rest of these services, it all depends on how much value you're getting out of using them for however long you decide to pay into these price tags, because after a while those prices add up monthly and monthly, to which after a year you'll be paying well over a full price game for having a subscription or using GameFly or renting a game out of a Redbox or some other service. But hey man, to each his own. If that works for you, then that's definitely a way for you to save money potentially from buying a full price game. And then lastly, and probably my most unfortunate obvious reason to not pay full price for any game that's out there at all, there's just no way in the Sorcerer's Stone that I couldn't not talk about this. You know what it is, freaking piracy. Now, like usual, every time I talk about this topic, I gotta mention that I don't condone this type of behavior. Do I commend it for those that want to walk that online criminal activity lifestyle? I salute you like a Marine. But we gotta be realistic here. People are always scavenging for ways to just be able to pirate on whatever device that they play their games on, whether it's on console, especially on PC, and obviously, the Nintendo Switch and, that whole can of worms. The bottom line is these prices are really insane, and people don't want to give up the hobby of gaming, so they resort to any other method that they can have access to, which includes piracy, to be able to get these games that they really want to play instead of settling. And I could obviously rag all day with how piss poor the American economy is, to which trying to afford a game in this climate is one of the worst things imaginable. But it's even worse for, other countries that have even less of an income for the average person, like Brazil right now, which is one of the more higher pirating countries, because trying to afford a game right there, at least a new one, is sometimes the majority of the average person's income, which is insane. So yeah, sure, breaking the law is bad. You wouldn't download the cards forever etched into my memory. But just realistically, gaming is one of the most universal and stress-relieving hobbies that aid a lot of people in escaping this hard reality that we call the world right now, and locking a lot of those newer experiences that people actually want to play and enjoy behind these insane price tags when it's just not manageable for some people is, it's going to lead to piracy, especially when some of these games aren't even worth the price that they're even charging, which is why I want to conclude this talking about that specifically. No matter what your financial position is in life, I can argue that the majority of most newer, I would even say AAA games, just aren't worth that $70 price tag, which you shouldn't pay even if you obviously can. Because don't get me wrong, when $60 was the base price for new games, that was obviously a steep price at that time. But now that that's jumped up to $70, that's made many players, including myself, just that much more skeptical of what we're paying for these games that are usually annual releases of the same games of the last year, or even games that come out in shitty states on purpose because developers know that they can just put a patch out and fix it in the first week of the game's launch. Like, it doesn't help that these games are being developed in the most safest way possible so that these publishers and developers get the return on their investments of these insane budgets. So you just have these universal same copy-paste experiences on all these action RPGs and first-person shooters, so everything just feels like they're the same game. But don't get me wrong, there are some newer experiences that do feel worthy of that $70 price tag, and even some games that came out under the $60 price tag, I would have been comfortable paying $70 later on if I knew just how much content and how good those games were actually, going to be before I played them, because we have games like Red Dead Redemption 2 that are just, amazing, phenomenal games. But even still, having those kinds of games just shows the gap between a great game and every other game that they decide to slap that $69.99 price tag on and claim it's a full experience, when we have games that we can, put side by side and show that it's just not that. So yeah, man, while not paying full price for a game definitely comes down to just being a waiting game or resorting to doing something illegal, I would rather do any of those than pay full price for a game that just isn't worthy of it, because more than likely nowadays most of these games are just not worth your hard-earned money. And that's all I got for today, man. If you enjoyed, leave a like on the video, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.